Welcome to Film Freaks. This is Justin Llewellyn.
And Eddie Williams.
And now we're talking about one of the most iconic movies of the 1980s that made Bruce Campbell a star and Sam Raimi a big-time director.
And a cult classic.
The Evil Dead from 1981. Now, I'll admit, when this movie was growing big with a lot of fans over the years, I actually never really got a chance to watch it until the remake came out.
I watched it, I think it was like 3 or 4. My grandpa had it on or something.
Oh, yeah?
I remember it was the first one, and the first thing I ever seen of it was the part where, in the first one where his friend is like hurting or dying or whatever on the couch, and he doesn't like that one girl saying, "Dead by dawn," shaking that thing, and it's scaring. That shit scared the fuck out of me as a kid. I remember that scene. Actually, I had to wait a few years to get into it because I was little, and that shit just scared me. It gave me nightmares.
Yeah, I first finally got a chance to watch this film. It was probably a year or maybe 2 years prior to the remake. Because
damn, you're really young, man, compared to me. I'm talking about when I seen obviously I wasn't born in the early 81. I was not alive by then. I think I seen the first time I ever seen the Evil Dead movie was in maybe 89, 90.
Okay.
And that was the first time I ever laid eyes on any Evil Dead. And like I said, my grandpa fell asleep. It was on TV. It was actually on his MTV or on his HBO or something. And he fell asleep. And that's the part where the couch where it's like "Dead by dawn, dead by dawn." Yeah. That shit, remember, scared the fuck out of me, and I had nightmares.
Yeah, well, basically the story goes, you have a little backstory. This film was actually, I read up on it, it's basically a remake, or it's actually an extended version of a short film they did called Within the Woods, which was also directed by Sam Raimi. What it is you have a group of people that go to this cabin for the summer, and they are discovering that there's this book that's there, and it's able to grant like spirits and stuff, and it basically resurrects the dead.
Yeah, it's demon. It's a demon written book, and you'll learn more history as we go along about where they explain more of the back history of it. But basically, what it does is it resurrects, like it opens a gate to hell from these demons.
Yeah, and that same concept was now used in the Evil Dead.
And it's up in the cabin they go to is out in the woods. I'm talking about deep, like away from civilization.
Yeah.
And it's up in the mountain, woody. Oh, man. And it's a cabin, which, if you guys from the 80s or know anything, that when we hit the 80s, we were really getting into that big cabin, woods type genre, where everybody was copying that with Friday 13th. Everybody was wanting to do a summer campy-ish cabin, woods. That was a big thing in the 80s.
Yeah, I think you can really credit that with Friday 13th, because Friday 13th was like one of the first films that used the whole woods setting to capture a lot of more of the horror aspect.
And then a lot of cult classics were invented that way. Just to name a few, Sleepaway Camp, Evil Dead, so on and so forth. And you got other ones who are B-rated, but they became as well-known minor classics. You know? Like that one I watched, The Burning.
Yeah. And so with the Evil Dead, going back to that Within the Woods film, that short film that Sam Raimi did, he basically now turned into the Evil Dead, which is the same concept. And you have these, basically these these teenagers that go there. They discover that there's this book that's there, and they realize that this book can resurrect hell, basically.
And because by reading it.
Because the first thing that we see that happens and causes all this is where one of the teenagers is reading,
the girl.
The girl is reading the book, and she's saying the words that all of a sudden you see like this point of view shot of the zoom in on the woods.
And it's funny because I used to call it Roadrunner thing because I didn't know what to call it, because all you hear is it's just it's a camera point view where this thing is running at the cabin.
Yeah, it's a POV shot of zooming in on the woods and shit.
And it becomes a cult classic thing because it's in all the movies, including the TV show.
It became Sam Raimi's trademark because he loves to use that POV shot.
Yeah.
And so that happens with all these demons that come out that are resurrected. And the first thing we notice is there's a part where the girl, I think it was Linda, the Ash's girlfriend, who goes to the woods and she's raped by a fucking tree.
Yeah, and This was actually pretty extended detail from what I remember in the original. And
yeah,
it's going through all her orifices and all that shit. And it's like, damn, it's
like
sticking in their pussy and all that.
Yeah, because the vines are like the I think it was the vines that are pulling her down on her legs, and then you see like the vines like going inside of her pussy and shit.
So as one by one, all the people start turning to demons and start becoming very vicious and trying to kill and possessing each one of them one by one. And this is our first interaction with Ashley Williams.
Ashley Williams, played by the very popular nowadays Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And this was his first movie. And this is actually the first film. We will get to this later throughout the retrospective. This is actually the only one I've seen where Ash is actually a pussy in this one.
He's a pussy. Well, this was supposed to be like... They thought it was going to be an original movie. They thought it was just going to be a one-and-done film.
Well, because in a lot of the scenes, he doesn't really do much. Like, he's running away from the demons and shit. The only scene where he's, like, actually doing anything...
He's not playing badass.
Yeah, where he tries to get the chainsaw like you see on the poster, like the original poster, but he doesn't really, really do anything.
Well, but not only that, if there's a lot of stop motion used in this film.
Especially when you see the trees.
Yeah. But that we're gonna get you.
Now,
I want to tell you right in this one. Okay, I'm gonna get to the point now because we don't want to spend too much time because in the second one's kind of similar. We'll get to that in the second one here in a second. But as a personal, I watched this film and then I showed this, with Kim that she's never seen the franchise. I showed her this whole franchise, including the TV show, just recently, and I'm going to tell you right now, like, everybody I've introduced this franchise to that hasn't seen the whole franchise, including myself, this isn't my favorite of the franchise, but for some reason, this one fucking petrifies me to this day.
Yeah.
It is actually the scariest Evil Dead of all of them.
Yeah, it's the one that's the most, it's very
disturbing.
Straight. It's disturbing, it's because it's played straight, too.
Yeah, and not only that We're Gonna Get You, they imitate the same thing in the second one a little bit, but then they also do it in the reboot, and those don't capture the chills in your spine like the first one does.
Yeah, because the first one, you see a lot of the makeup effects and the way that the lighting's used. Yeah. You see a lot of like the way that it's playing, the way that she's saying it.
Yeah,
really holds a lot of atmosphere and intensity to that scene.
And I think a lot to do with the stop motion, with the score, and believe it or not, 80s low-budget films actually are the best ones that scare you. And it's the 80s. Low-budget 90s and 2000s can't capture the fear that they were able to do in the 80s for some reason. 80s cult classics, that's why I wish if I was a director, I would love to have been old enough to make movies in the 80s, because you were able to take something so simple and it would become a cult classic. They can't do that no more. No movies can do that anymore.
Exactly.
And when I showed her the Evil Deads, I talked to her, and we talk about it every now and then since we watched it, and I asked her, to this day, which one scared you so fucking bad that you had a hard time? She goes, I had a hard time watching the first one. She said, I can deal, the second one was kind of, to her, she said the second one scared her, it didn't really scare me. She loved the third one because it was funny, and she enjoyed that, didn't have to turn away on that one. Then she said the fourth one was kind of creepy and stuff, but she said the first one was so disturbing. She had a hard time watching it. She almost couldn't watch it.
I can understand that. Yeah, the first one has such a great atmosphere, and you're right. With the low budget use, that's something that we don't see often nowadays. Because back then, literally, this film was made on such a shoestring budget. Because from what I was hearing behind the scenes, Sam Raimi was actually he basically did it out of his own pocket.
Well, it's like any director back in the 80s. I mean, look at cult classics made out of your own pockets. You had The Evil Dead, then I believe that same shit happened with Wes Craven with the Freddy Krueger series. Remember, they were broke. They had to pull a lot of money out of pocket. And I believe, and he was shooting short shit, like little cheapo movies that didn't cost but a fucking penny. I believe there was a few other directors got famous and big with that did out of pockets. I think it was 80s. You could do with just money pocket, and you would not believe what the shit you can make.
Exactly. But what also helps with the first Evil Dead is the characters themselves are very likable. You know, they're your everyday people.
Yeah,
you know, they're not like they're basically what you expect in this kind of genre.
Yeah.
Because they're picked off one by one, but you're still rooting for them to try to get out of the situation.
And this one, I do gotta say that even though it doesn't bother me because the movie is just likable and so much that. You could tell the acting's somewhat low budgety.
Well, because that's the thing. The movie has a B-level quality to it.
Yeah, but it works.
But it's unintentional though, because they wanted to make it as a straightforward film.
Yeah,
not realizing that the film would actually go on to become a cult success.
Yeah, they didn't think that, but it gets creepy, you know. And then Ash actually, you know, not to go into too much details because it's really you don't have to go like. It's kind of really just self-explanatory. He's the only survivor at the end of the film, and we end with thinking he might have died
because you see this POV shot that zooms in with like the force or
when he defeats
the deadite or whatever is coming onto him, and it goes to his face, and he does this weird like scream.
Yeah,
you know, and so. I'll tell you right now, the first Evil Dead I find really fascinating as a film. Yeah. Now, I do have some things I didn't notice, like as years went by, I didn't notice some of the obvious, like, if you see like some of the more like high definition quality, you see a lot of the makeup effects they use that are kind of outdated.
That's the problem with the upgrade, but I noticed that, we noticed that with where they kept doing the shots of like the cloud with the moon and then the cabin from the darkness. They kept panning off every now and then, and all you hear is like a wolf, and you could tell that was like a house model.
Yeah, you could
and you could tell somebody's stringing the fucking the moon around. Like, I mean, there was some parts that.
But if you get a chance to watch the film
take a laugh.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't help. If you were able to watch the film on a classic VHS style, you don't have to worry about that.
This is one of the films that I recommend you don't upgrade to Blu-ray.
No, I would recommend watching it either in the theater on like a 30 millimeter or whatever, or on VHS, the best quality.
Yep,
because it gives that authentic feel to it.
Yeah.
Now, after this, no one really explained. Overall, I'm going to give the movie probably a 9 out of 10. Like, it's one of my favorite horror films growing up, or not growing up, but one of my favorite horror films that I've seen. And even though it's more of a B movie, it still is a great horror film.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on this one. 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a cult classic, and no denying it can send chills off your back, especially if you can get your girlfriend and go out to the middle woods and order a cabin and put this bitch on. And don't tell them that you won't get chills in your spine.
Yeah. So after the movie came out, no one really expected to be really much of a success because Sam Raimi didn't even realize that it would be a franchise. Mm-hmm. So a few years later, when he got a chance to direct the next movie, he wanted to basically... Well, here's the thing about this.
It's still controversial.
Here's the controversial part. Sam Raimi actually couldn't get the rights to the first film. So, when we now get to Evil Dead 2, the movie actually opens... They had to actually rechange something. Because the first film, you had 5 people going to a cabin. The second film, they had to redo some things because of rights issues. So... If you actually take the first 7 minutes of Evil Dead 2, it's actually kind of a remake, basically.
Basically, what they did was... I don't know I can't remember. Was Sam Raimi trying to make a direct sequel?
He was, but because of rights issues, he had to change basically the story a little bit. But
so what the thing I can't remember
is use footage. He couldn't use footage from the first one, so that's why he had to change a little bit of the opening.
I can't remember why he made the movie so identical, where it's considered either a sequel or a reboot.
It's still okay.
The movie was shot really weird. It is really shot like a reboot.
The first 7 minutes. After the first 7 minutes, it's a sequel.
It is a sequel, so that's the hard part. And it's like he may have... You could say it could be not a remake, but a reboot where he's kind of changing everything up. You know how reboots are different.
I'm sorry, it's called... the term they used back then, I think nowadays they use it still, retcon. Retcon is where you are still doing a sequel, but you're still kind of changing some aspects from the first film or like a previous entry without trying to basically ignore it.
It almost could be like a reboot because there's a difference between remake and reboot. Remake, you go for verbatim.
Right.
From that. A reboot is whenever you kind of doing some of the things from the first one, but overall doing your own version.
Right.
And to this day, it could be a reboot. But anyways, that's not how they did it. They went ahead and called it Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, so basically, because the first 7 minutes, but before we get into the story, you actually see a backstory involving how the book was developed, because you see Dr. Carnaby.
Yeah, and that is really cool. I love that opening.
The opening scene involves with Dr. Carnaby basically on a mission where I forgot, it's been a while since I watched it, but I remember...
he was in a desert.
I think he was in a desert or something, and he's basically explaining how the book was created and everything.
And that's because that cool opening
where it shows the book and everything.
Getting drawn, and this is where you could tell that Sam Raimi went from maybe a few $100 to now this is getting a motion picture kind of shot.
Yeah.
Now this is where it looks like a movie.
Yeah, and so we get the same kind of deal where, like the first one, Ash and his girlfriend, this time, it's just him and her going to the cabin.
Yeah, they didn't bring those people back.
You can kind of think it's kind of like a remake because it's just him and her instead of the other people.
And it's Linda again.
And it's Linda, the same character. So they go there, he kills her after she gets possessed, but then after that 7-minute mark, it becomes a sequel. Yes. Basically, because it's now dealing with him becoming possessed, because now he becomes possessed at the end of the first film, and he's having to deal with his evil side.
And unlike the first one, which was straight out just petrifying and scary, this one, they were able to put some comedy, but the comedy is so minimum that this still holds up as a scary movie.
And it still works because, for one, it deals with a lot of the bumbling aspects that Ash is usually known for, but making it very hilarious. Like the parts where he's like...
funny.
Yeah, especially where he's like, who's laughing now?
But it's still very scary.
It is.
The comedy's so minimum. It's not like when we get to later on when we talk about Army of Darkness, which it was just comical and having fun.
Right.
But this one was the last not really terrifying as the first, but it's still scary.
Right, because basically they deal with a lot more gore this time. It's very gory with a lot of the stuff that involves the Deadites, about the same as the first one, but they're mixing it more with comical moments, with Ash being like
So Ash loses Linda again, and he's battling from the book. It was read because this time, instead of them reading it, a tape recorder was accidentally turned on, and that read the book for them. That's how they come alive in this one. After Linda, the Roadrunner thing comes again. Point of view comes again, takes Linda. She's possessed. She becomes this really evil, taunting demon, taunting throughout this film. He ends up that famous chopping the head off. He puts her in the cemetery. And then this is where it starts getting kind of funny because she comes out naked, starts dancing, woo!
Yeah.
Doing that, and he goes, what the fuck? And then you see her titties and all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it kind of reminded me of Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, the stop-motion effects they use is similar to what they would later use in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, that's what is funny. But anyways, and a difference from this one and the first one is, like we said, that the friends don't go with them in this one. This one, he runs into a group of people who eventually go there.
Yeah, and one of them is this girl named, I think her name is Jenny, who goes there with these other people, and they're basically...
What it is, it's a girl, and it's this, and her husband, and Jenny or whatever. But anyways, she goes to she flies to this place to rent a car to go to the cabin, because that was her great-grandfather who owned that cabin, who...
Dr. Carnaby.
Yeah, Carnaby. And basically, she is on the route to find them and get the other pieces of what she needs of the book and stuff like that. But then when she ends up there, she finds out this is like probably an hour in the film. There's blood, there's guts, there's all kinds of shit going on. I think at this point Ash might have lost his hand and chopped his hand off.
He chopped his hand off because his hand becomes possessed after he's dealing with the Deadites.
And that part has some comedy in it.
That is iconic, too, because that not only... So he cuts his hand off, and then he puts a fucking chainsaw on it.
And what's funny is there's some parts with the hand. It gets possessed. And I thought that was funny whenever that the hand was on it, connected to him. He was grabbing the plates and
and
then grabbed another one.
Dude, I love that part.
Knocking himself off, and then when he chops it off, Ash is getting in a fight with his hand, and that hand flips him off like, fuck you.
Yeah, I remember that.
But then there's a lot of gory, and this is what's really cool, because this movie kind of is scary with its, like, haunted house type thing, because you get the walls dripping
all dripping blood and shit.
And then the blood pours out, then he sees himself through the mirror, and then it turns around, and it's a demon of him. Then you get the taxidermies talking and laughing at him. You know, and that shit actually sends creepy shit up your spine. Again, it tries to keep the first nostalgia with the very terrifying, but it just adds some spice of comedy, which is doable. Yeah.
And so when they actually get to the cabin, you start to see that they think that, if I remember, because it's been kind of a while since I've seen the second one, I think I remember hearing something about that they think Ash might have something to do with it, and that they're trying to survive from all this shit that's going on.
But anyways, as the wife and husband get closer to the cabin, they break down, and they run into two other people, some hillbilly couple that owns a tow truck company, and that is what makes 4 people show up at the cabin instead of 2. And they show up to this bloodbath. I mean, hell, they just think that the girl and the family and these 2 people are convinced that Ash killed the grandfather and they think that's their family's blood.
Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, but then that's where we run into the creepy grandma.
I remember that, because
that used to scare me the fuck out of me as a kid. That grandma, because the way she is, like demon stuff, and she's fat.
She's kind of doing the same thing like in the first one.
Yeah, and it's doing the Nana thing. We're gonna get you. Yeah, it's doing that, but then it's also doing its other stuff. Dead by dawn. Dead by dawn. Yeah, I mean, this shit is really fucking creepy, man.
Yeah, but then you also, as the movie goes along, you also get to see a lot more of the development with Ash as a character, which I really like, because you start to see that he's now become a hero.
Now, that's my problem with the first one, why I praise this one a little bit more than the first one, was, like you just said, they build a character from him. He's not somebody who... Because if you go back to the first one, it really doesn't have a lot of lines, really. No, he's really quiet.
He's more of like he's
a whiner and a quiet guy.
All of them are really just kind of just typical characters, but he's really like the one that doesn't really do anything until the last act.
Yeah, and this is where I think this is the rise of Ash, the true rise
and
of
also,
Ash.
This is the first time you get to see one-liners from him, especially my favorite all-time line, where you get to see, it happens later in the film, where he has his foot on a corpse, on a deadite's head, and he's like, "I'll swallow your soul," and then Ash's like, "Swallow this, bitch."
Swallow this, bitch, and then this is where we hear Groovy.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Yeah.
And then we hear his other lines he does.
Yeah.
So this is the start of... The first one I don't really count as like the true rise of Ash. This is the real true rise of Ash.
Right.
This is what... First one, I just see him as Ashley.
Yeah.
This one, I see him as Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we start to see a lot of, like, different things going on with the Deadites and everything. And
then we get those 4 people I was saying.
Exactly. And they get killed off. Some of them get killed off one by one.
Well, when they're convinced, they're thinking Ash killed the grandparents.
Right.
So they beat him up and throw him in the cellar, and that's when he's like, "Hey!" And then that's where the old woman, that's another funny part, she's taunting the shit out of him. He's like, "Let me the fuck out!"
Yeah.
And then, and some of them start getting possessed, and this one is actually kind of tones down on all of them getting possessed, and they spend more time of them getting killed.
Yeah.
Like, physically killed, instead of just doing easy possessions. This is actually watching them getting slaughtered, which I enjoyed a lot more than seeing the same shit where they all get possessed. That kind of kills it, because they just get possessed. This one, I was cool to see them getting slaughtered, actually.
Yeah, they do a lot of really gruesome ways, too.
Yeah.
You know, especially...
They try to do the reenactment of the rape scene with that one chick.
Yeah, I remember that with the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, also, overall, like, the second...
And then that fat dude, that shit was gory.
That was fucking...
Where he got stabbed in the back, and we do get a scene where Ash actually becomes one of them, and they have to fight Ash.
Yeah,
and then he
becomes Evil Ash.
Because he becomes Evil Ash, and that's something we didn't really go into detail earlier, but when he was by himself, he gets possessed.
Well, yeah, it was at the beginning of the movie when the POV shot comes in and it possesses him.
Yeah, it possesses him, and then the part where the fat guy, because he was stabbed in the back by Ash, and this is where we actually see the shit that can actually defeat them, that skull thing, you know, the book, and then it has a skull thing, the knife, which is later put in the actual fucking show, which is cool. But anyways, we see the cool, glorious shit where the fat old woman pulls the fat dude down and eats him.
Yeah, I remember that shit.
Oh,
that
man,
was
all that
fucking
blood and guts. Oh my god, that shit still follows me to this day. I love that scene. And this one, we start getting towards the end where it's just him and the girl, the grandchild, the woman who went there. Her husband's already dead. They're all dead.
Yeah.
Those truck people that helped them get up there is dead. So it's left with just the chick and him, and they got to try to survive until morning.
Right, and then we start to realize that as we get to our climax, that when he's trying to use the book and everything, or I think he's trying to use the book, we start to see that there's like a weird portal, black hole that comes in all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, they're reading shit from the book, and the book is, at this point, is torn up. So they don't know which passage they're reading, and the girl's trying to help him out, but then the woman is stabbed by his hand that he cut off. And she is actually pretty much about to pass away, and she's trying to read the last lines before she dies. And this is where he said we get the black hole, but we get a tree that comes in.
Yeah, it crashes into the cabin, and then it also destroys his car.
Yeah, well, it turns into this monster big hand thing, and pretty much she dies, and he gets sucked in this black hole.
And which makes him go back all the way to the 13th century, where he's basically labeled as a hero in the medieval times, which sets up Army of Darkness.
Yep.
So, overall, I gotta say, Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite all-time horror comedies.
Yeah.
But it's kind of weird because I don't know how to clarify this as either more of a comedy or a horror. Because it's
easily, I'm gonna have to say a horror because actually the comedy is just minimum. The comedy doesn't really take big effect till the third one.
Right.
But I'm going to say this one is actually my favorite out of the franchise.
It is. It's my most favorite out of the franchise because not only do they mix the comedy and horror really well, but they also mix in a lot of what you would expect from an Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
You know, you get your blood, you get your character development for Ash.
I think it's a highly upgrade from the first one.
And also, it's the first one, well, much like the first one, it's also the one that every critic, when it came out, fucking praised it to death. And even to this day,
Ebert praised it.
Yeah. And so, I really do recommend it a lot, especially if you get a chance to watch it on VHS and maybe check it on Blu-ray, but I don't know how
Actually, I've seen it on high def. It's not as noticeable like the first one is. The first one is highly noticeable.
Yeah.
For a second one, I think you can do with both versions. It ain't that bad. I mean, always go classic with these movies. Do VHS. If you don't, I don't think it's going to hurt too bad to watch on DVD.
Yeah, fair
First one, you really do need to watch VHS.
Yeah. So, overall, I give this one a straight 10 out of 10. Definitely a perfect fucking great mix of comedy and horror.
Again, I'm gonna agree with him. The same score, 10 out of 10. It's one of my up there favorite horror films. Not probably my favorite, but it's up there. But it is the best of the franchise, hands down.
So now, after this one, much again like we talked about with the first film, once again, Sam Raimi, this time he actually wanted to go more big budget this time, so he actually wanted to get a major studio involved. He teamed up with Universal to do a follow-up, which was going to be originally called The Evil Dead, or The Army of Evil Dead, or whatever. I think Ash versus the Army of Evil Deads, I think. And basically it was going to be Evil Dead 3. But problem was, much like the first one, he couldn't get the rights to the film franchise.
Why is he losing his rights
I don't know.
every time he does these fucking movies?
It's weird, because, every time a film came out with these movies,
he loses
the rights to the fucking movie. Right.
Unless he's trying to sell it or something, I don't know, and then he wants to come back. He needs to stop doing that. Just own the motherfucker.
Yeah. So we get the third film, which is a lot more big budget this time. It's instead of calling it Evil Dead 3, because they wanted to deviate from the title, and also because of rights issues, they had to call it a different movie. So now it's called Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Now, Army of Darkness starts similar like how it kind of starts out like the end of the second movie, like at the very end of it. But the only difference is, in the beginning, we see that they're retelling the events of the second film, where instead of Ash going back in time, where he's labeled now as a hero, they retell the events where, like the second one, Linda gets killed, and he goes, and the events happen in 2, But in Army of Darkness, it shows that he goes back in time, and he's now basically a prisoner.
Yep. And this is now the medieval times.
Yeah.
He's now a prisoner, and we thought he was supposed to... Yeah, like you said, he's reigning hero at the end of 2, but then he's seen as...
a fugitive. Or a prisoner in the third one.
Yeah. So then they keep him captive, and they think he's part of the Deadites.
Yeah. They think that they don't... And also, when he came through the portal, he not only had his chainsaw, but his car went through there, was smashed.
Yep.
So... he gets introduced to this really dickhead knight dude who's accusing him of murder and everything, and saying that he's like a weird sorcerer or whatever, or I don't know, something like that. Yeah. But anyway, he goes into this well where he basically deals with a deadite.
Yeah, they throw him in this well because basically it's like gladiator shit. They think it's an ultimate death sentence because everybody they throw down there dies and gets torn apart. And it's gory too. And he fights all these little fucking deadites and creatures and stuff. And he ends up being Ash. And like we said, this one, they really don't do any of the horror really with it. This one is just straight, like, Rambo meets
This
comedy.
is actually more slapstick this time. They do a lot more slapstick in this. And very great, too. Because
this movie's full of one-liners, badass Ash, I'm Rambo now. And this is really comedy. They kind of do the whole medieval feel to it. And they also do a lot of... like the weird scores, like dun 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 dun. Yeah. Like they're really having fun with this film now. This is not nothing like horror no more. This is really just for fun.
Yeah. So now we get it to where you see that Ash, after after defeating the Deadites, he is now basically kind of taking control of the situation.
Yeah. Now since he survived something they all didn't know, and they found out he had this weapon that could shoot bullets.
His boomstick.
Boomstick, and they're like, oh my god, he's the king, he's the best. And then they actually promote him and shit, and he's now one of them. Yep.
And then he's basically trying to get home, where he's like, all right, wizard man. Because we get introduced to this other character that's in the film who is kind of like a hermit or whatever, I guess, or I don't know what he is, but he basically says that he can find a way to get home, but he has to read a secret passage. He has to read a scripture that has to be verbatim, which is basically the same scripture from the original movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah, and he also is told that if you help us at least defeat the Deadites, we'll help you get back home.
Yeah, because as the movie goes along, you start to see that he becomes... At first, he's kind of a dick to the townspeople, but then he starts to, get into what's going on with the situation, and he starts to help them out.
And he's starting to fall in love with this one chick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the teacher from Matilda.
Matilda, yep.
Yeah. And, as the movie goes along, you start to see that he is trying to he tries to remember the scripture that happens, but he can't say it verbatim because he misses up one word where he's like, Klaatu Vrata Nictarir or whatever.
Yeah, and then he tries to cheat, and that's whenever something else comes up, you go, fuck. And then, like, he goes to this one, like, cemetery where he makes it to the darkness world where all the Deadites live.
Yeah.
And that's where he finds 3 of these books written.
Yeah.
And then 2 of them were actually traps.
Yeah, and then after that happens, because the phrase doesn't work for him, he basically now has a second part of him. He gets Bad Ash, who gets introduced, where he's like, "You're good, Ash, and I'm Bad Ash."
Yeah, and then you get and then they do the Three Stooges thing.
Where he's like poking the eyes and
they're
shit,
fighting each other, and that's actually a big plot because the Bad Ash actually stays in the world that he lives in
and becomes
the head demon that runs the Deadites.
Yeah,
and he raises his own army of skeletons, which they're fucking hilarious because you can hear them talking shit. The skeletons talking shit to each other and getting hurt and doing little petty shit where they break their bones, like, fuck my leg.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but then he goes to that. He ends up trying to come back, but then he stays at that little propeller place, that
the windmill
place, and basically this is where they try the Roadrunner thing comes. They try to fuck with them again, and they create the little baby Ashes and stuff.
Yeah, where he's like, London Bridge is falling down.
Yeah, and they're sitting there fucking poking his ass with the fucking pry forks and shit. And he's trying to step on him and crush him and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that part. It cracks me up.
Yeah.
But anyway, as the movie goes along, you start to see that he basically, because he has a second part of him that's now trying to, kill all the townspeople and everything, he becomes the leader of the townspeople, and he has to use his army of townspeople to fend off the army of darkness.
Yep.
And it gets really, the comedy works so well in this film that you're basically watching it in kind of a different film than an Evil
you
Dead
feel sorry
movie.
for these time people. He's got to fight the Bad Ash as they follow him to this castle where he's staying at, and basically it's the final battle. It's the major war.
And then we have to also he also deals with now the girl that he was after is now possessed.
Been taken hostage.
Yeah. And so the film, that's basically it.
It actually, believe it or not, as much as the whole franchise is a big following, this one actually got the most cult following.
Well, this one, but also this
because
is actually
majority of people actually put this one as their favorites because it was so fun.
Yeah, it was so the comedy works so well.
To me, it's still good. A lot of people put it as their favorite. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I enjoyed it.
I do love it too.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind that when this film came out, it actually didn't do too well at the box office. It actually bombed.
Yeah.
So it was because the fans, they actually praised a lot of it, that it actually became a cult success.
Yeah. I think it was a movie that had to grow on to people because people were, back in the day, when they went and first seen this in theaters, they expected it to be like 1 and 2 where it's really straight horror.
Well,
and it was kind of a weird change that a lot of people said it was hard to embrace at first, but as it aged, it got better, and people accepted it.
And the reason why is because since this was a lot more big budgeted, Sam Raimi wanted to try to do it as a box office hit because he was working on a major studio. He wanted to see if he could have his 2 Evil Dead movies work as a mainstream movie instead of a cult success.
Yeah.
Which, granted, it still became a mainstream movie. It's just that it's more of a cult following because of the fans.
Well, anyways, Ash ends up beating his bad self. And that's funny because they're sitting there talking shit to each other.
Yeah.
And he dies the most funniest way whenever he flings him out of that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the comedy's just constantly just funny. So Ash gets sent back to his world. And we come into where he's working at the market.
S-Mart.
S-Mart, and he's been narrating the story the whole entire time.
Yeah. And he meets a new employee there, which is kind of reminiscent of Linda. Yeah. And
this actually kind of is resembles the TV show, which we'll get ready to talk about, because it kind of still resembles the TV show.
Well, and also it deals with him because he also deals with one more Deadeye that comes in,
and he does this one-liner where it's
like "Hail to the King, baby."
Yeah. And
then, now here's the thing, though. When this film came out, believe it or not, this was actually supposed to be a different ending they had in mind. I don't know if you ever watched the alternate ending. There was an alternate ending they had where instead of him going back in time to the S-Mart ending, there was actually an ending where he actually ends up he ends up going to this cave and he keeps his car there. And there's a part where I remember watching where he falls asleep, and then all of a sudden he wakes up centuries later, and it's like in the near future where time has elapsed, and it's a funny part where he's like, "I slept too long," and he's basically all the world has ended. Now, could you imagine if they would have went with that ending?
They would have went to that ending, the continuity of the TV show, which is magnificent, and then supposedly ties with the reboot. It would have really not made sense to those films. I'm glad what they did because it works well with the TV show, especially because the TV show actually has them working kind of the same place.
At the time when it came out, I think that's what they were trying to do because they wanted to end the franchise.
Yeah, they wanted to, but
I can see why they went with the other ending because it gave them on a triumphant note.
Yeah, triumphant note and possibly bring him back.
Yeah, but overall, man, with Army of Darkness, I actually really enjoy that one. I'd probably give it probably 8 out of 10. It's got even though it's not as gory as the other 2 films, it's still fun. You know, it's still an enjoyable movie that has it's Bruce Campbell being Ash and being a badass and everything, and plus this is the moment where they were trying to do something where Ash is now a leader, and you're just seeing a lot of slapstick.
I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I'm going to say this is actually my least like of the franchise. even though I still like it. Because there's one thing about all the Evil Deads, there's not a bad Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
Really, personally, there's not. But I just think this is my least liked.
And then now, between this and the next one, they actually talked a long fucking time trying to do a fourth movie. And technically speaking, I'll talk about this just for a second. We kind of got a little bit of it with the video games that came out. Because in the mid-90s, we had a video game that came out called Evil Dead Hail to the King, which was on PlayStation, where it takes place after the Army of Darkness movie, where Ash actually goes back to the cabin again, and he's dealing with the book again, and this time he's having to deal with his new girlfriend who just died, and then you start to see some of the other famous, like, Deadites come back to life that are trying to kill him after him. So they have continued the story in video game form, especially with the other one called the Evil Dead Fistful of Boomstick, which actually I think the TV series.
Didn't you like that one?
Yeah, this one actually I think the TV series, which we'll get to later, actually takes inspiration for it because in the video game A Fistful of Boomstick, the Deadites are actually in the town, so you actually get to see a lot more of what can happen if when Ash is having to deal with all that stuff in our world.
Did they ever make another one again?
They did. They did another one that was called Evil Dead. I forgot what it was called. I think it was called Evil Dead something. But I remember it had he had a little sidekick who was like a little mini guy. And that game actually was a retcon because what happened was that game is a what if scenario of what would happen if Ash never went back in time. So basically, it's a continuity it ignores Army of Darkness.
Okay.
So anyway,
I didn't really play the video games. I've seen some of them, but he's more into that than I would.
Yeah, I played the other two games, but anyway, between this, they talked a long time for a while, but doing the fourth one, but it kept falling apart.
And now that Bruce Campbell, because these movies made him so big, he went on to TV shows like
Burn Notice, and he also did that other one that came out called My Name is Bruce.
Yeah, and he kind of was pretty much said he was retired as far as movies.
Yeah. So, and then in 2013 or 2012 we were announced that we were actually getting a remake of Evil Dead, which actually surprised me.
Reboot.
Because in 2012 it was announced that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell announced that they were going to do a remake.
And
the remake
was like he was going to be behind screen.
Well, Sam Raimi was involved with producing the remake, and the remake came out in 2013. Now, I'll be honest, when I first went into this, I was really, really expecting to hate this one because, keep in mind,
remakes that Harley do.
Well, yeah. I remember, I didn't grow up with the Evil Dead series, but I still remember at least the 2 and 3, and seeing them do a remake without the character Ash involved, or even Bruce Campbell, really almost
There's some things you can't do. It's still iffy that they can replace Robert Englund as Freddy in the Freddy franchise. Then you have, with Evil Dead, Ash and only Bruce Campbell could play Ash. That's just some characters you cannot recast. You just can't.
That's what I'm saying.
Let alone they actually leave Ash Williams completely out of this movie. They don't even reboot him. Yeah.
So, basically, now we get into the remake, and the remake deals with...
I remember, though, I did see the trailer to this film in theaters, and the trailer did get me kind of anticipated.
Yeah, the trailer actually got me curious because...
Alright, it was like I wanted to hate it because there's nothing without Ash, there ain't nothing.
Yeah.
But, for some reason, because it was being considered as very, very brutal... And I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. So I went and seen it on opening night.
I did too. Well, it was opening weekend, but I watched it with my cousin Eric in the theater, and I went to see it because I was kind of curious with the trailer I watched. I was like, you know what, that looks pretty fucking brutal.
Yeah.
So I go and do it, and then the movie deals with, much like the first film, it has a group of characters that are going into this cabin because they're trying...
No, actually, this is how it starts. It starts out back in the 1700s with the witches.
That's right, I'm sorry. We had this prologue that involves these witches that they actually burn, and they go into pretty great fucking detail with that brutal, with that burning
death.
Yeah.
You're trying to kill me, you stupid fuck.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, when I seen the opening in the movie, I went with Serena and we seen opening night. Like I said, I wanted to hate it. It ain't going to be Ash. you know, stuff like that. But then, I mean, I did get kind of feeling, and when I seen the trailer, they did have a guy that actually looks like Ash. He wears the blue thing, and I thought he was actually going to be Ash.
Yeah.
And they was going to reboot him, and that's why I wanted to hate it, because no, there's Bruce Campbell's only Ash.
Yeah.
Come to find out that isn't Ash. But anyways, yeah, we get in the when I seen that scene at the beginning with the 1700 and the witches, and I was like, the brutality in that, I looked at it and said, damn, I actually might like this.
Yeah, I was actually surprised they did a prologue that was different from the original movie.
Yeah.
And so...
And they take the serious approach again.
Yeah.
And make it very serious.
They knew that they couldn't go with the comedy, so they played it straight. The story, we also get introduced with these new characters that are involved with the remake, which involves the people are going there to this cabin to help out their friend, who's the dark-haired girl, who's also, if you saw that movie, Don't Breathe, it's the same chick from that movie.
Yeah.
Where she has blonde hair in that one.
Yeah.
Basically, they're going there because she's really dealing with, like, a lot of mental issues.
And
drug use.
Drug usage, and I think somebody, like, because the brother is the Ash look like.
Yeah.
And that's her brother, and apparently I think their mom died of cancer or some shit like that.
I think so, if I remember.
And she went depressed and did drugs and shit like that. And basically, they're using this as a getaway to get her. And again, it brings 5 young youths. Family.
To the cabin.
Yeah, the cabin.
Which actually kind of threw me off at first, because I remember when they first go to the cabin, you do notice there's like a car on the side of the house or the cabin or anything. That car looks mysteriously like the original car from the original movie.
Yeah.
So they go there, and much like the original film, it basically deals with. Well, and not unlike the original film, they don't do a tree rape this time. Instead, you get to see that as the movie goes along, you start to see that the girl who's dealing with mental issues, she gets in the woods.
They actually do the tree rape.
Well, they kind of do, but they don't really, because when she goes through the forest,
the only thing, the thing is,
it's not her. It's pussy. Not right. It's just possessing her. It's
well, anyways, this 5 people show up, and basically, they're exploring this place, and it looks run down. It's the cabin. And a guy finds a baggie, and it's barbed wired. And he goes to open up the barbed wire, and it's the Book of the Dead.
Yeah, and then he starts reading the passages.
Yeah,
and then we start to see that after the main girl goes out to the forest,
because this girl is all right. At first, I will say that I was kind of getting really annoyed with her whininess, but then she got better later on in the films. I just didn't care for her whining and bitching all the time.
See, that getting bothered me too much, because I can understand that a character like that would probably go through those kind of stages.
She keeps having these depression problems where she keeps walking off and she doesn't want fucking help. She's going through these drug withdrawals because she went through heroin, so she's puking a lot and feeling sick. She goes out in the woods. These trees start wrapping her up. And it doesn't show detail like they did in the other films, but it does rape her. It goes up her dress, and that's basically what they show. But you can get the detail what that tree's doing inside her pussy, and she's sitting there screaming.
That was a pretty.
And it's a brutal scene. It's still a brutal fucking scene. No questions asked. But then she goes. The thing is how did they find her out there again? She was found out there.
Yeah, she was found out there because they were looking for her, and then
because they noticed she went missing.
Yeah. And then she goes back to the cabin, and then she's basically, it takes a while for things to go loose, because she's basically she's going back and forth between being herself and then being possessed.
And then she's also terrified of what she experienced, but she doesn't know how she can explain it to anybody.
Yeah.
So she doesn't tell everybody what happened out there.
Yeah, and then as it goes along, you start to see that. It's been a while since.
Well, the thing is I still remember it, and the thing was she starts getting really terribly sick.
Yeah.
And one of the people that's there, the black one, I think it is, she's actually an experienced nurse, and she's thinking that something is seriously wrong with her. We got to get her to the hospital. So, by this movie, they do something that none of the films do. It's raining constantly.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly. And then that's where the guy and them tempted to take the girl into town, and instead of recopying the original with the whole bridge being torn apart, the bridge that's been done in all the films, this one, they flooded it.
Right, I remember
Instead,
that.
the bridge doesn't really go over a mountain. This one's in a valley, so it's kind of flooded over.
Yeah.
So they realize they're fucking stuck. And then that's when, all the shit starts going loose, where she starts transforming slowly. And I do like the detail, and like the other ones that was 80s, they didn't really care for digging too much of the story. This one does have a lot of dialogue, and it builds it up.
It does, yeah.
It builds up and start rushing into that. Which actually, believe it or not, I actually like that.
I do too. This is one of those, I'll be honest, after as the movie went along, I was actually really going along with it.
I was getting into it.
With the story.
Yeah,
because I appreciated the fact that even though it's taken the same approach like the first one did, it's still expanding upon it with seeing things we didn't really get to know about from the first one.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Even though they do some remake parts, like the girl doing that, we're gonna get you. And which, by the way, the way she did that was fucking creepy.
That was creepy, yeah.
In the reboot. But other than that, they do a lot of their own stuff.
They
do.
it is pretty much the same general, bare bones of the first story, of the first movie, but they're still making it to where you're still understanding why these characters are becoming possessed and all that.
Yeah.
And also...
And it's slowly doing
it, too, yeah. And so, as you start to see them become possessed, they do really great fucking makeup effects on them. The practical effects they use for all the makeup, that's really haunting what they look like.
Yeah, and not only that, this movie does bring its creepiness back. Not as good as the first,
right,
as far as creepiness. You gotta respect the original,
right? Of
always.
Course.
But this one did its own thing, and I'm gonna tell you right now, this movie was absolutely fucking gruesome.
It was.
And I fucking like that. My thing I was worried about, it wasn't going to be gruesome, which would kill it an Evil Dead film. This was so goddamn gruesome.
Well, that's good. The pros I give for that, too, is they
that.
all use practical effects. There is no CGI.
Yes.
All the gore, and even the part where you think it might look CGI, where the puking, and even the rain. You see a part where rain's actually bleeding.
And the house is bleeding, but you also get that part where they all are turning slowly possessed, which they do something different. They don't do like they've never done Evil Dead films. Instead of really them going doing that, just suddenly becoming possessed, they slowly get possessed.
Yeah.
That black girl starts sawing her fucking mouth.
Yeah,
remember that?
With the glass.
And that's what I'm saying. What's really creepy about this one is when these people get possessed, they're slowly decaying and they're harming themselves. They're carving in their
I think
bodies.
the most brutal part for me was hard to watch was the part with the needles. Remember that part with the needles where the girl
eyeball
with the eyeball? Yeah. That was fucking it was like ugh.
Yeah.
But anyway,
but
anyway, as far as the things that I really like about this one, I really like the characters are good for the most part. The only character I didn't like because she was just kind of a throwaway character was the blonde-haired chick.
I know. Really.
She didn't really do anything besides being the girlfriend, and she didn't really have much dialogue.
No, she wasn't. She was there to be killed.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, they at least gave dialogue and something with the black girl.
And I do like the guy with the glasses, the Eric dude.
And he starts noticing stuff, and he's just playing, I think there's something wrong. And he's trying to tell him, but he doesn't know how to explain it.
And nobody bellies him.
Yeah, no.
And he's the most logical character.
And he's wanting to fucking leave. And he's like, I'm scared, something's wrong and stuff. And then, how she... They all die very gruesome deaths in this film. And not only that, this is what really, tricked me. So the girl, you think that the girl is the Linda character.
Yeah.
So basically, you thought she's the Linda Quinn, and when she was possessed throughout this film, you knew that she was going to be dead, probably going to be
because it actually shows her being buried.
And I thought the other guy, because I've seen a lot of trailers of him doing a lot of shit similar to what Ash did with the chainsaw and all that.
Yeah.
And then going in the shack and all that stuff, where the girl's like, and then he chops the head off like in the original. So you think he's Ash, but then we do this twist where he actually dies.
Yeah.
And then you're like, that's not Ash.
Yeah.
And they do the twist where it's actually the girl's the equivalent of Ash.
Yeah, which threw me off. I thought that was a cool twist how they actually made it to where the guy gets killed off, because at first I was kind of predicting
I mean, weren't you thinking he was Ash?
Yeah, because the way it went along, I thought he was going to bury her and then he has to kill him off with the fucking chainsaw.
Well, he did. He chopped that one head off, and then that which was really clear and creepy. And that bag. Oh my god, dude. The movie did send chills in my spine. As far as reboots reboots, because there ain't many reboots out there that does this, because you gotta admit that 80% of our reboots are pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Majority of the time. This was a damn good fucking reboot.
I really did like this one a lot. I know some fans of the original films will probably hate this one. Yeah. I mean, 50-50, but I can see why people would be upset because no Ash and everything.
I agree with you guys, but I'm going to see it as its own standalone film. I gotta admit, for a remake, I walked out there happy.
I did too. I was expecting to hate it, but I turned out really surprised by it.
And I love the gruesome. Oh god, it was so gruesome. I loved it. And that was my only thing. MPA is going to butcher the fuck out of this. And they didn't. No, they didn't. Because I went in that theaters, and god, it was so fucking brutal.
And you know what's cool about that is that they actually wanted to release a unrated version of it, but unfortunately it got cut out a lot.
Really didn't need to because they allowed it. They allowed a lot
I found out that this month in October that they actually have an unrated version coming out that's even more fucking brutal.
Oh yeah.
So,
but anyways, it's kind of, we really don't need to go in details because it's it's an Evil Dead film. Cabins, people start getting possessed.
Yeah.
And then the girl's left, and it's actually the girl fighting her own bad self, kind of like Ash was fighting his own bad.
Exactly, but this fight scene that she has with the demon is really fucking atmospheric as hell.
Yeah.
With the raining blood
and
you
then
see the chainsaw.
Instead of doing like where it's possessed hand, well, she has the possessed hand, but you think that's when she's going to chop it off, but she actually does a twist where she's not trying to chop off her possessed hand. There's a part where she's about to be killed by the main demon thing, and she has to slice her fucking hand off with the chainsaw. And that's when she starts doing the one-liner thing like Ash did, and you're like, that's the Ash. Okay, it's an actual girl now. And then, like, they, Victoria's, and she starts there screaming at the end, like Ash did in 1. And then credits roll, and then you get an actual surprising backwards credit scene where it came out of nowhere where it's Ash himself.
Yeah, where he's like, Groovy. Yeah.
So we're led to believe that either he did that out of just nostalgia, just for fucking around, or is there hinting that this is actually going to be not a reboot, but actually part 4. This was actually 4, and this could be continuation.
There's a possibility.
We'll never know. We'll find out in the future. Well,
overall, I do like this one a lot. I mean, yeah, it's got some problems here and there, like with the blonde-haired chick, and the fact that, they do kind of make the girl a little too much like Ash toward the end, but overall, I do like what they did. So overall, I give the movie probably 8 out of 10.
I'm going to actually up it over you. I'm going to go 8.5 out of 10. It's my third favorite out of the franchise out of 4. I mean, I'm sorry for nostalgia reasons. I do put it a little bit over at Army of Darkness, only because Army of Darkness, still a great film. It's just more comedy. It didn't really... Yeah. It's not like a traditional Evil Dead that I respect what they did. I just think as in straight horror, it did better than... Obviously did better because it was not straight horror. Army of Darkness wasn't. So I do put that... I still got to say it is a damn good reboot. So
there you go.
So 8.5 out of 10. Since you know more of that.
Now, between the remake and the next one we're going to talk about, they actually had 2 things they wanted to do in mind, which I think they're still going to do, but they're still kind of like, they're still up in the air about it. Originally, Sam Raimi actually talked to the director of the remake to do a second movie of the Evil Dead remake. Yeah. And he wanted to basically but then he also decided to do a second Army of Darkness.
And that was going to tie them two together.
What he wanted to do was, he wanted to do a second sequel to the remake, and then a sequel to Army of Darkness, and then a third film, which would tie both of the franchises together.
But due to a lot of detail, a lot of money, and years are probably going to be expanding between these movies, he was offered a TV series. They were offered a spot on TV.
Yeah. Which when I first heard about it, I was really, really skeptical because oh, please fucking no. We're getting way too many horror films that are on TV now that are really neutered. Please do not put this on television. Yeah. But when I heard about that it was going on to a regular paid channel like Stars, I was like, okay. Yeah, you got a channel that can show a lot, and it's got a lot of, can show a lot of shit. So, okay, I'm down for it.
And then I hear that Bruce Campbell was going to play Ash again. That really
got me excited.
And yes! Sam Raimi said that we were going to keep it nostalgia, keep it with the comedy. what it did from the nostalgia, but we're also going to keep it gruesome and keep the story going, and it's going to be nostalgic. It's not going to be updated looking. It's not going to be that high quality where we're going to just make it for newer people.
Yeah.
We're going to stay for the original fans.
It
when
was.
I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm all the fuck in. I'm all in.
And so we won't...
Especially after seeing the trailer.
Exactly. That trailer, when we first got it, really got me curious because it basically showed that we're seeing a more older Ash who is now dealing with things that are in modern times. So
now we're at Ash vs. Evil Dead.
We're going to go just a little bit in detail with the first season because we're not going to spoil anything for those of you who haven't seen the first season, so we'll keep it very minimum. But basically, the story goes, it's 30 years later where we have Ash
working at that same
store, S-Mart, and he's pretty much kind of more of a player now. Well, he's been a player for a while because he's hitting up women at the bars and shit, and
basically living at this thing at the working at this place. Basically, there's a big period where, after he defeated the Deadites and back in the medieval times, they pretty much left Ash alone where there's nothing going on.
Well, the thing is, too, now keep in mind, this is kind of the controversial thing. Because of rights issues, the series is more continuing off of the first two movies rather than Army of Darkness.
You know that they're they can't say it, but you know they're referencing.
They are referencing, but they're not specifically, hinting at Army of Darkness because of the thing. For
continuity, I'm going to say it's...
Okay.
Yeah, it is after, because it does have a scene where he does mention where he kind of went back time, but he couldn't say it really because they would get sued. But it's continuity, it is.
We'll just say it's after Army of Darkness.
Sam Raimi is really saying it is, it's just he said that he can't legally say it is.
Yeah.
He said it is. So it is, and basically he's been pretty much, after defeating him in Army of Darkness, he's pretty much never been bugged by the Deadites again, so he's pretty much lived free.
Yeah.
For all this time until
one day, just to set up the plot, there's a situation that happens where he's hanging out with this girl. And
this is where it's comedy.
He's high on drugs, and he brings the Deadites back to life by reading the book while high.
Yeah, well, he's high and he's blacked out, so he didn't remember. And then the girl kind of really fucked it up too by helping him read the book, and then the Deadites come back. But this time, when they were finally released from the book again, they're like, where the fuck is Ash? Kick his ass.
And this time,
they're really after his ass.
And this is where we also get a different approach, where, because it's modern times now and it's on television, we start to see that Ash is not only the main character. We get introduced to two other main characters, Pablo and Kelly.
And the thing is, this is actually, we're getting a Ash movie where he's actually has psychics. Mm-hmm. He actually has psychics. Kelly kind of comes after a few episodes later, but it's really mainly tries to start out with him and Pablo.
Yeah, because Pablo works with him at the store.
And they actually, thank God, I love this episode. We actually get a whole episode with Ash talking about all his past. And it actually shows us scenes from all the movies.
Yeah. Well, except
for the
Army of Darkness. But we'll say
it is reference. It is reference. But by, like you said, legal issues, they couldn't show that scene, but they showed us the first two scenes of the movies from the first two.
Right. Yeah. So we pretty much get as the story goes along, you start to see that they have him and Pablo are trying to stop the Deadites from happening, and then while at the same time you're also seeing that we also get introduced to Kelly, who is kind of more, she's more of an independent woman because she thinks that she can handle things on her own.
Yep.
And she actually turns out that way because she starts to be a badass throughout the season.
But then again, she also noticed she needs them too.
Right.
And not only that, the Deadites really have it for Ash. They really want him to suffer for what he's done to them in the past. And that's what they've been wanting to do, but he's been trapped. We also get another subplot with the girl from Xena.
Yeah, shit. What
I can't remember.
No, I can't remember her name. I lost my train of thought. But anyway, she is... well, we're not going to spoil anything, but there is actually a part that actually links up to the events of the other films that we won't spoil until you watch the series. But as the story goes along,
especially too, it really links them in two.
Yeah,
it actually does.
Yeah, and so it basically, as the story goes along, you start to see the dynamic between Ash and Pablo and Kelly, and I love their relationship together because even though that these are outsiders that are helping Ash is still doing a lot of the shit that you would normally see him do. Yeah. You know, he's not just having them do all the work. He's still kicking ass, and he's actually, you know, trying to take down these Deadites.
Yeah.
And also, unlike, and this is probably one of the few times I can say that the TV series probably amps up the gore possibly more than probably the second one did.
Yeah. Because her name is Lucy Lawless.
Yeah, Lucy Lawless, I'm sorry. What was her character's name?
I can't remember her character's name in this, but she is tied with the families from the second one. That's the small thing I'm not going to go into detail. That's just like a little teaser.
Yeah, but anyway, I can tell you right now, just not going into too many detail, I can say that overall, for what we've seen so far with the series, I really love this series, and I really like to see how far they're going into, because now we're on season 2, which is now...
We definitely can't talk about
it. We can't talk about it because it's in progress, but I will say that if you are definitely a hardcore Evil Dead fan, and you love the gore like the other movies, you will definitely love this one, especially seeing how Ash has now progressed as a mentor to these two friends, but also as a character that we know and love.
Now, I'm not going to compare it to other TV shows that ain't on right now, but as far that's not on right now, like, you know, like Breaking Bad and all them. But as far as right now that is still continuing on, this is probably one of the best fucking TV shows that's done it completely fucking right. This and Fargo.
Yeah, Fargo.
I can't say Breaking Bad because they don't have an original movie from back in the day. I'm talking about for original classics. Fargo, you know, staying true to what they were made from the original film. Them and Ash vs. Evil Dead are the only two out of like Limitless and all them other dumb shit that they've been failing at. They're the only two to get it fucking right.
Yeah, because it's sad.
Stay true to their source material.
And not to mention, they're able to bring back original cast members. Yeah. Well, I mean, Ash vs. Evil Dead is able to bring back the original cast member from the original movie.
And I'm going to say it is one of the best fucking horror TV shows on to this day.
Yeah.
The nostalgia, oh my god. You would not believe how big my smile was when I seen the first episode. I couldn't believe the nostalgia, what they stuck with. Sam Raimi and Ash... Bruce Campbell, man, they really fucking told us the truth. They weren't lying. It is so nostalgia, and oh my god, I thank them for that.
The fan service they give us,
not to mention, I love the expansions that keep going on, and it's actually showing us the creators of the books. It shows us actual more demons we've never seen before,
and
it's really expanding.
It does, and you get to see a lot more gory things that we haven't seen before, and a lot of the comedy works a lot even too.
I gotta say, I really loved the build up. I'm not gonna tell the whole story of the build up. Everybody's seen what comes in this, so this isn't really a spoiler right here. But I like the build up to the cabin when they go back to
that. Was awesome.
I was like, oh my god, I love this.
Yeah. So you see that this is actually the closest that we'll probably ever get to Evil Dead 4.
Yeah.
As far as sequels, but for those of you who are fans of the franchise, definitely watch this because this is everything that the fans would love continuing the franchise. So on that note, we're pretty much from the first season I've seen, I'm going to give it probably a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 9.5 out of 10.
My only little con is that there were probably some episodes that probably could have took just a little bit of time. Because I did notice that even though it's a fast-paced show, they did notice that they probably could have cut out some things to lead up to the next episode.
It's like they kind of did some fillers. They did a minor. It's not serious like some shows, but they do have some fillers. Yeah. They draw out. Yeah.
Right, but overall, it's still a great show.
It's still a great show, and this is going to be something that's going to be apparently going to go on for a while. Ash said he's enjoying what he's doing right now with this, and we're going to get plenty of seasons.
Exactly.
And you know what? Be honest with you, man. as long as they keep doing this, I really don't care if they do a movie. Really, I'm happy with what they're doing.
Yeah, if they end here with the TV series, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and no, be honest with you, they don't really need to do any more movies. They can continue on until like season 5 or 6, wherever, where they want to end it for good.
Exactly,
and then that could be it. That could be fucking it.
Exactly. So overall, yeah, I do recommend pretty much all the Evil Dead movies. They're all really great. My least favorite might be probably the first one, just a little bit over some of them, but I still love all of them. Don't get me wrong, I love all of them.
Yeah, my least favorite, like I said, my least favorite is the Army of Darkness. My favorite is Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, my most favorite is Evil Dead 2, but overall, I do highly recommend every one of them. Mm-hmm. So, what did you guys think of the Evil Dead franchise overall? What some of your most favorites were? Comment below, and if you guys like what you see here, you can check us more out of our retrospectives on SoundCloud and on YouTube. And we'll be having more retrospectives here coming up here soon. We'll see you guys later.
Later.